I noticed it first in the silence. Not the quiet kind that comes after laughter fades, but the heavy kind that sits in your chest when you're waiting for something that doesn't arrive. The living room was decorated carefully, streamers taped a little crooked because my daughter insisted on helping, pastel balloons drifting lazily near the ceiling fan, a banner spelling her name in glitter that had already started to shed onto the floor. She stood in the middle of it all, holding a paper crown that kept sliding down over one eye. "Is Grandma coming soon?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I checked my phone again. No new messages, no missed calls. I smiled anyway. "Any minute," I said. I had said that a lot that morning. The cake sat on the dining table, untouched. I'd ordered it a week early to be safe, double-checked the spelling, paid extra for the decorations she wanted. Everything was ready. Too ready. The kind of ready that assumes people will show up. By noon, the doorbell still hadn't rung. I sent a polite message into the family group chat. "We're ready whenever you are. Smile." Read receipts popped up one by one. No replies. My daughter wandered back to her room, came out again, then sat cross-legged on the rug, unwrapping the corner of a gift she already knew came from me. She didn't complain. That was the part that hurt the most. She was old enough to notice patterns, but young enough to believe excuses. At one point, she asked if we should start without everyone else. I said yes. We sang anyway, just the two of us. Our voices echoed oddly in the decorated room, bouncing off empty chairs. She made a wish and blew out the candles in one breath, clapping for herself like she'd seen other kids do at real parties. I clapped too. That night, after she fell asleep surrounded by wrapping paper and stuffed animals, I cleaned up alone. I popped balloons, folded the banner, slid the leftover cake into the fridge. With every piece I put away, something in me hardened, not into anger yet, just clarity. I opened social media without thinking. That's when I saw them. Photos posted an hour earlier. Smiling faces. A long table at a restaurant I recognized. Wine glasses raised. My parents. My siblings. Cousins I hadn't heard from in months. The caption read, "Early celebration. Couldn't wait." 2 hearts. My daughter's name wasn't mentioned once. I put my phone face down and sat there for a long time, staring at the reflection of the kitchen light on the table. This wasn't new, just clearer than before. 2 days later, my phone buzzed while I was at work. It was my mother. No greeting, no check-in, just a message. "We need you to send money today." I stared at the screen, waiting for context. Another message followed immediately. "Your sister's party planning went over budget. Everyone is pitching in. Don't be difficult." I read it twice, then a third time. There was no mention of my daughter. No apology, not even acknowledgement that they hadn't shown up. Just expectation. As if skipping my child's birthday was irrelevant, but funding someone else's celebration was mandatory. I typed slowly. "You didn't come to her birthday." Several seconds passed. Then, "That was different." Different. I asked how. The reply came sharp and fast. "This one matters." Something shifted in me at that exact moment. Not rage, not heartbreak. Resolve. I looked at a photo on my desk. My daughter covered in frosting, grinning with missing teeth, wearing the crooked paper crown. Then I sent the money. Not because they deserved it, but because I wanted everything documented. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't beg for fairness. I transferred the amount they asked for and added a short note they wouldn't understand until later. That evening, my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. Messages piled up. Confusion first, then irritation, then anger. "What's your problem? Why are you acting like this? You're being selfish." I muted the thread. The next morning, I made a decision I should have made years ago. And by the end of that week, my family realized they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. The first sign that something was wrong came quietly. Not through shouting or threats, but through paperwork. 3 days after I sent the money, an unfamiliar envelope arrived at my office. No logo on the front. Just my name, typed neatly, with an address I hadn't given out recently. I assumed it was junk mail and set it aside until my lunch break. When I finally opened it, my stomach tightened. Inside was a printed invoice. Not from a company, not from a vendor, from my family. It listed shared celebration expenses, broken down line by line. Venue contribution, catering adjustment, decorations, emotional labor. At the bottom, a note in my mother's handwriting had been scanned and added. "This is what family responsibility looks like." I laughed once, out loud, in my empty office. Then I read it again. They weren't asking for help anymore. They were formalizing it, turning expectation into obligation, acting as if my money was already theirs and they were simply itemizing how it should be used. That night, I didn't tell my daughter anything. I helped her with homework, read her a story, tucked her in. When she asked if Grandma was mad at us, I told her no. I told her adults sometimes forget what matters. Later, when the house was quiet, I spread the papers out on the kitchen table. Invoice, transfer confirmation, screenshots of the messages, a pattern. That's when I realized this wasn't just emotional neglect anymore. It was financial pressure. And it wasn't new. I went back through my records. Old messages, past transfers I'd brushed off as help, emergency funds, last-minute requests, times I'd been made to feel guilty for hesitating. It added up, slowly, uncomfortably. I had been paying for peace. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not dramatically, not angrily, just prepared. She listened without interrupting as I explained everything, from the missed birthday to the invoice to the history of expectations. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "They're trying to establish precedent," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For access," she replied. "If you keep paying without objection, it becomes assumed. Especially if it's documented." I swallowed. "So what do I do?" "You stop," she said simply. "And you protect yourself." That afternoon, I sent one message into the family group chat. "Please stop sending financial requests related to events I was not consulted on. Any further demands should go through my lawyer." The response was immediate. My sister accused me of being dramatic. My mother said I was humiliating the family. My father wrote that I was forgetting where I came from. And then came the threat. "If you don't cooperate," my mother wrote, "we'll take this further." I didn't reply. 2 days later, they did. A formal letter arrived, this one stamped and signed. They were claiming I owed continued financial contribution as a family supporter, and accusing me of withdrawing support without notice. They weren't suing yet. They were testing me. I handed everything to my lawyer. Her response was calm. "They don't realize what they've done," she said. "By putting this in writing, they've crossed into coercion." "What happens now?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "Now," she said, "they have to prove they're entitled to anything." A week later, the court notice arrived. They had filed a claim. Not against my business. Not against my income. Against me. They were arguing that I had an ongoing responsibility to contribute financially to family events and obligations, and that my refusal caused emotional and reputational harm. When my daughter saw me holding the papers, she knew something was wrong. "Are we in trouble?" she asked quietly. I knelt in front of her and took her hands. "No," I said, "we're just finally standing up." The court date was set for a month later. During that time, my family changed tactics. Apologies mixed with pressure. Love mixed with blame. My sister sent long messages about stress and misunderstanding. My parents asked to talk like adults. Relatives I barely knew suddenly had opinions. I stayed silent, because this time, silence wasn't avoidance. It was strategy. And while they were busy rehearsing what they would say about loyalty and family duty, they missed something important. They had put a price on neglect. And the court was about to ask who, exactly, had failed whom. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic benches, no echoing chambers, just rows of seats, muted colors, and the quiet hum of people waiting for their turn to explain their version of reality. I held my daughter's hand as we walked in, feeling her grip tighten when she saw my parents sitting on the opposite side of the room. My sister didn't look at me. My mother did, once, long enough to make sure I noticed. The judge entered without ceremony. Everyone stood, then sat. The process began. My parents' lawyer spoke first. He talked about family values. About tradition. About how, in some families, support is shared and expected. He described me as someone who had suddenly withdrawn, causing distress and embarrassment. He framed my refusal as cruelty. He never mentioned my daughter's birthday. When it was our turn, my lawyer didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She laid out the timeline calmly. The invitations that were ignored. The celebration that went unattended. The immediate financial demand that followed. The formal invoice. The escalation into threats and legal pressure. Then she paused. "And this," she said, turning to the judge, "is where intent becomes clear." She submitted copies of the messages. The invoice. The language used. Not requests. Expectations. The judge read silently for a long moment. Then she looked up. "Why," she asked my parents, "did you feel entitled to financial contribution for an event you did not invite the claimant to plan, attend, or approve?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. My father spoke instead. "Because she's family." The judge nodded slowly. "And what responsibility," she asked, "did you believe you had toward the claimant's child?" Silence. That silence did more damage than any argument. The ruling didn't take long. The court dismissed their claim in full. It stated clearly that there was no legal or moral obligation for ongoing financial support under coercion, and that attempts to formalize such expectations crossed into harassment. They were ordered to stop contacting me regarding money. Immediately, the gavel came down softly. It was over. Outside the courtroom, my family stood in a tight cluster again, but this time, no one spoke. No accusations, no anger, just shock. My sister finally looked at me. "You didn't have to take it this far," she said. I met her eyes. "You took it there when you ignored my child," I replied. She looked away. We walked out without another word. Life didn't become perfect after that. But it became quieter. The messages stopped. The guilt trips vanished. Invitations came with boundaries, or not at all. I stopped being treated like a resource and started being treated like a person, even if that meant distance. One evening, months later, my daughter asked me something that stopped me mid-step. "Why don't we see them anymore?" I sat beside her and thought carefully before answering. "Sometimes," I said, "people confuse love with control. And when you don't let them control you anymore, they leave." She nodded, considering this. Then she smiled. "I like our birthdays better now," she said. So did I. We celebrated her next one differently. No big plans. No expectations. Just a small cake, a park picnic, laughter that didn't depend on anyone else showing up. As I watched her run across the grass, I realized something I wish I'd known sooner. Family isn't who demands from you when you're vulnerable. Family is who shows up when it matters. They skipped my daughter's birthday. They sent a bill like it didn't matter. They crossed a line they thought I'd never defend. They were wrong, and I didn't need anger to prove it. Just clarity.